Good evening, everyone. My name is Jennifer Harris. I am the president of the America's Hometown Laureates, Inc., period. Or we affectionately call it AHL, if you hear that, or HL for Hometown Laureates. So you'll be hearing more from us. I have the honor of introducing our MC, but before I move on to that, I'd like to thank everyone for coming. I'd like to thank all the poets for how responsive they were in this quest to bring our first poetry open mic event to the town of Plymouth. And just to put in your mental calendars, I am working on an email list, so you're always welcome to reach out to me to let me know if you want to be on that list. But our next upcoming grant that we just received from the Mass Cultural Council is called Plymouth Poetry Festival. And we're putting together, I believe it's Tuesday, June 6th, Wednesday, June 7th, Thursday, June 8th. We're trying to have several locations throughout town, North Plymouth, Main Street, and then down Cedarville. And we're going to try and have some locations where there will be open mics, like a bar, restaurant. I'm looking at the Plymouth Art Guild, maybe Pilgrim Museum, some different venues that will be welcoming to poetry readings. So we're excited about that. So anyone who has emailed me will get information about that. And then we will be active during Plymouth Pride, as well as the Waterfront Festival. And finally, one of our major grants that we receive from the Town Promotions Fund is we are bringing a renowned poet to the Spire. The date is October 29th. We're in negotiations right now with a nationally known poet. And we will be working with our current Plymouth Poet Laureate, Stephen Delbos, will be the Master of Ceremonies that night. So this is pretty exciting stuff, all this grant work. So enough about that. And at this time, I would like to bring Stephen Cole to the stage.
You guys are clapping like you even know who I am. Thanks, everyone. I appreciate it. I want to thank Jennifer, our president of AHL. It's a distinct honor to be a member of that board also. Also joining us tonight is Elizabeth Shanahan-Jewett, who's also on the board and also a member of PAC TV's awesome team of production. Thank you for being our media partner. Joining us later tonight will be Amy Naples from the Chamber of Commerce, and we'll also have, I don't think Glenda will join us this evening, but she owns Books and Sundry. If you haven't been, it's one of the best bookstores I've ever been to. Please visit that store. It's an amazing place to be. And also Melissa Kenny from the Cultural Council. So we have an excellent board. Thank you so much for your leadership, Jennifer. It wouldn't have happened without you. Thank you so much. Let's give Jennifer a round of applause. So I'm Stephen Cole. I'm just some guy, but I have a really cool job. I get to run the Economic Development Foundation. And I know what you're all thinking. Why is there an economics nerd at the front of the room at a poetry reading? Shut up. I kid. The best way to answer that, frankly, is because through John Adams. John Adams, he was a minister in France. He was being teased a little bit by the aristocrats when he was begging for support for the American Revolution. And he said things like, I have to study war and politics so that my kids can study things like math and philosophy, so that their kids can study things like poetry and painting and porcelain. And that, to me, stood out, even at a young age, because what he described was an evolution of a complex system that had economic output. So why is the Economic Development Foundation here supporting this? Partly because you're the higher choir of angels for a very complex system, and Plymouth is only really just starting to discover how creativity lives here, and it's thriving here. So one of the first things that I did when I got on the ground here was we created the Poet Laureate program, non-traditional economic development project, but the intent was to promote you all in your hard work and to show that creativity lives here. So before I introduce the first presenter, the first poet tonight, I just want to say that it's an honor for the Economic Development Foundation to support you, to support this event, to give time and money and attention to this. We see you, and we hear you, and we're excited for you to be here. So welcome home to America's hometown where creativity lives. Thank you so much for participating tonight. Give yourselves a round of applause, would you? I expected something more thunderous, but it's okay. Tonight's first speaker is Betsy Hinchy. Betsy, did I say your last name correctly? Hinchy? Great. Betsy Hinchy lives in Plymouth with her mustachioed husband and her rambunctious pup, Potato. You may see them on their walks to the beach and along Grace Trail. She is balancing her day job as a global health professional with writing a collection of hybrid poetry. Betsy, come on up here. Thanks so much.
All right. Hi. So this first poem is called One. One. If trees are connected, underground synapses relaying information between root systems and fungal filaments about sunlight, drought, and the wrenching pain of chainsaws and relentless itch of termites, or the qualities and nutrients in soil that humans have yet to create names for, then what other connections exist beyond our blunt eye? Did the stars communicate deep intergalactic frequencies less detectable than dark matter? Or do planets warn each other of species that eat away their insides or corrode their atmospheric bark? When stars burn, do they send smoke signals through their funeral pyres? Or is their combustion more like rebirth, a celebratory candle in the sky? We extend our eyes, ears, mouths, and fingers into the world like roots searching for signals, or not searching, but receiving nonetheless. We grasp at the air around us, gather broken pieces of incomplete information, and relay it back to our too heavy brains. Unlike the trees, tendrils intertwine for miles and miles and miles of forest, we stand stiff, like telephone poles stretched across the earth's surface, and toss each other wires, hoping we don't lose much in the static, hoping our lines don't get tangled or weighed down by birds or wrapped around another's neck. But what if there's something more important than underground tree networks or humans' desperate attempts to understand each other and everything? What if there's an energy that can't be understood by us or the trees, vibrations of the universe that connect all, no matter the species or star? Here, 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 it says, this. Are we all too distracted translating more tangible languages that we miss the most important of all? Here, 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 this. If for a moment we could connect with the frequencies of nature and earth and air, sense the signals of the stars, feel the rippling vibrations, what would happen? Would we be sent spinning like tops, waiting to topple, hoping to fall in the direction of righteousness, waiting and spinning until we forgot we would ever want to stop spinning at all? And I have one more shorter poem inspired by Plymouth. It's called Burial Hill. Burial Hill. Erect slabs of slate mark 400 years of death, pilgrim souls beneath lichen-covered stone. I climb the grassy mounds, wondering what's left of the spirits from this town, and remember getting lost in the paved paths of the cemetery in Lviv, Cossack soldiers, borscht brewing babusi, and other versions of myself, of us all, buried beneath. I can hear their ghosts wailing as more Ukrainian children are killed in a war they thought would be over by now. But the pilgrims taught me nothing ends. Husband, wife, the headstones read, parted below, united above. Perhaps this makes us feel better, the inevitable reunion with lost love, lost land, or makes it easier for us to hurt each other. The Russian boy with a rifle strapped across his back, hands empty, walking towards golden fields and something that can never be undone. Pray for me, he asked his mother on the phone. Later, left behind in a trench, barely buried, his body piled among others, he will not have a gravestone. His comrades strip his wrist of watches he pillaged from villages. Pray for me, his vacant eyes call out to the blue sky. Pray for us, the pilgrims called out that first winter, hiding their loved ones' bodies in deep holes, hands dirty after unearthing Indian bones from shallow graves, newfound buried treasures in their pockets. Pray, we plead, as heard as the pilgrim screams across the sea. Fall upon your knees and pray for all of us who will soon fill graves not yet dug. I bury my prayers on this hill and watch the moss grow over. Thank you.
Thank you, Betsy. Our next reader tonight is Sarah Grady. Sarah is a coastal and estuarine ecologist, a former poet laureate in Harvard, Massachusetts, who now lives in Cedarville, Plymouth. Her favorite kind of poetry to write and read is nature and love poetry, sometimes at the same time. And tonight, she has curated a collection of poems inspired by the nature and coast of Plymouth and beyond. Sarah, come on up.
Hello, everybody. Liminal. Such narrow lines divide the earth and sky. The boundary is always at our feet. Yet we look up to clouds that pass us by and declare a firmament complete. But what of waves that crash upon the shore, whose lapping must divide the earth and sea? Forget not then about the ocean floor, where water lays on ground eternally. Look now to the embrace of sea and air, where each crest kisses, mingles into foam, and seagulls cry and wheel without a care to make both of the elements their home. Thus earth and sea and sky are given bounds, and in the liminal, there man is found. Earl Grey. A cup of Earl Grey with milk, please. Took the stool closest to the big bay window, sipped my morning infusion, and watched the ferry steam away, flags flying. Gale warning today, they say, blustery day on the docks. As I walk away, the wind tries to reach inside my coat, whistles tunelessly in my ears, presses against my skin for warmth. The jetty launches the hopeful tips of waves into the air, where they mingle with the wind and dissipate bergamot breath with strong, salty exhalation. Sentinel. A sentinel stands strong upon the shore to tell all navigators to beware. Its light will shine just as it has before, reliable and steadfast, always there. The beacon swings away, returns again, an intermittent light and shadow cast, a beam that shines upon you, flash, and then back into shadow once the beam has passed. If sorrows fall like shadows on your heart, and you feel dashed and sinking in the sea, keep eyes on the horizon, check your chart, and beams of joy will guide you back to me. When cast into the dark, fear not the night. With every turn through time, there comes the light. To-do list. Oh, it's about a lighthouse. To-do list. Let me just check my time. The day weighs heavily on me. What didn't I accomplish, I ask, while I was listening to you sing at the top of your lungs? What was I avoiding while we dug a pool in the sand with our bare hands, made tiny rivers fill it, and dipped our sandy palms? Wasn't I just procrastinating while I taught you the names of snails, and I told you it was okay to sit on any rock, just watch for barnacles? I was clearly shirking my duties when I drove you over the bridge that you think is Rhode Island, then through the countryside, then over the bridge 2 more times, both ways, because you slept through it the first time. Your hand weighs lightly on me as we lay together with twilight outside, and breezes blowing through the window, and crickets chirping. Your nose presses into my side, your little hand rubs my belly, and this is all I need to do. This is called the largest alocid. So the alocids are the herring family. When April showers swelled the river deep and serviceberry heralded the run, the evenings filled with lustful frogs a-peep and dinners eaten with the fading sun. With strength of swimming not to be outdone, the shad in schools pursued their destiny. In silver flashing chaos all were one, and demonstrated their anadremy. Their journey took them from the salty sea to swim this stream where we now wade and cast. The fight upstream was no hyperbole, where osprey, bass, or heron could repast. So sapidissima to beast or man, we hope at least a few complete their plan. And then one more, glacial. The glaciers only stretched so far, pushing sandy ridges ahead, leaving giant stones behind, and digging holes, whether pot or kettle. They shaped the land for us, gave us a place to rest weary bodies on sun-warmed ground, cool sandy pools ringed with sedge and rush. The edges of that ancient frozen extent pressed hard on that earth, traced out homes for our predecessors, until we found our place amidst rock and field and forest.
Thank you, Sarah. Our next poet tonight is someone I had the pleasure to meet a few years ago, and I've been following her career ever since. It's been an absolute pleasure to get to know this woman. Miriam O'Neill has published 3 collections of poetry and numerous book reviews. Her collection, The Body Dialogues from Lilly Poetry Book Review Books, was nominated for a Massachusetts Art of the Book Award in 2021. She hosts the monthly reading series Poetry, the Art of Words at Books and Sundry at the Plymouth waterfront. Miriam O'Neill, please.
Hello. Thank you for putting this together, Hometown Laureate Committee. And I'm so glad to be part of this. So I have a handful of poems. Most of them have to do with birds. Birds follow me, haunt me, interest me, teach me. My new book has a bird on the front. So, but I want to start with a poem that came from the night of the Plymouth Poet Laureate finalist reading in February of 2020, just before the world shut down. We had a wonderful time. We had 90-something people in the library, in the Phalo room. It was great. And we sold a lot of books, the people who read. So this is a poem written to the woman in the white sweater who hugged me. I'm sorry I've lost your name, which I asked for in all sincerity. It was a hectic night, books to sign, friends to greet, the headiness of applause fresh in my bloodstream. And there you were, the look in your eyes telling me something had happened to you in that room. Was it the thought of going free like the birds in my last poem? Some childhood memory shaken from its nest to pirouette in winter flannels? I'm still thinking of your embrace, the way you stayed close longer than the others, shorter than I am, gazing up. Your white sweater, its neckline of ribbon rosebuds like a pillowcase pinned on a line in winter sunlight. Thank you. I know I said that at least, when you leaned against my chest and said, I loved but didn't finish. My mother sometimes did the same, left words unsaid. And now for a bunch of birds. It's a little tiny poem. Imagine what tree tells owl early in the morning as light opens its mouth and begins its meal of night. This is a totally different kind of bird. I'm old enough to, actually, I was young enough to remember the 60s, but old enough to have been there. Shuffling the late 60s. They were the years of cornets and violins, the sounds of triumph and nostalgia, spigots of tears, frantic flames, the way we enveloped each day of body counts and bodies burning and brutal beatings before our eyes, and they called it news, and we called it shame. And Nina's 88 keys were rifle shots some didn't know how to hear. And the suits were pale blue, as if that made the sellout unreal, man, as if caring was a commodity in a futures market. Oh, yes, it was. If you've seen the documentary about Nina Simone at the Summer of Woodstock, but in New York City. So I have just three more poems. I forgot to check that. A radiance of shadow. 5 a.m. 8 crows converge on roof's rim and scuffle hoe the wooden gutter, thumping so hard I imagine a pair of stout raccoons up on the shingles. Out in my robe to investigate, they disperse. The split-rail fence, the spruce, the yellowwood all fill with squawking until by ones and twos they wing away. All night, all week at night, you have stood beside the dead under the gaze of others and pronounced the time of death. Grief, a harvest of wild berries on your tongue, you taste in sleep, that inky sweetness of fruit picked too soon or late. When my brother left, a radiance of shadow bloomed from his dying. That night I lay awake, my breath and pulse a chant inside my body. Just the same, just the same, just the same. We had jostled around his bed, taking turns, whispering names in his ears of loved ones. Traveled with him as far as our living would permit. Then the quiet of him gone spilled us back today, and we scattered to our tasks, eyes brilliant with witness. Like crows at dawn, we manage each new loss, forage in our guttered grief, then fly on. And I have 2 small poems. Icarus had a son, in case you didn't know that, the legend. I mean, if there's going to be a legend, there may as well be, generations in the legend. Icarus's unclaimed son has questions. What did it mean to fly when no one could? What was there to fear that we aren't wise enough to fear now? Where was he going, and who with? Why did my grandfather insist on the sky? Why was I not in the plan? When I find a white feather afloat on the Aegean, I remember that I cannot remember him. And so I'd like to end with this poem. I told you I love birds. Birds have different names. We know about the murder of crows. Did you know that a flock of turkeys is called a rafter? And finches, a group of finches is called a charm or a cheerm. This is called the charm. This noon, finches claim the feeder. Muddy scarlet house and golds in their winter drab, they flick away the titmice and juncos who lurk in the privet, gray on buff or black on gray, who must dart for seeds while the finches chaff their fill. I used to wait for him on my perch, hope he'd choose me, though I didn't know how a boy decided. And no one bothered to explain I was unnerving, my bookishness a charm of words that made most boys flounder. The years have passed and that bird's flown, 2 wives wedded and left, and fledglings spun in nests of promises then discarded. And I, settled as a stone, unwinged, what should I do with this happiness? Thank you.
Thank you, Miriam. Our next poet tonight is Tiff Phillips, who I've had the pleasure to get to know myself also over the last few years. And she is the creative producer and writer for the local scene at BIPAC TV. She also performs at poetry slams and as a stand-up comedian. Very funny person, by the way, if you haven't get to know her yet. But considers her true profession being an aunt to her nieces Emmy, Eleanor, and Livy. Come on up, Tiff.
Hi. So lately I've been writing a lot of icky stuff about mental health. So I'm just gonna give a trigger warning, just if you're uncomfortable with that kind of thing. I understand, feel free, I won't be offended if you step out. And if you need any mental health resources, I'm available after the show. There are over 43 million people in this country who are battling mental illness, so you're not alone. Let's chat about it. This is called Letters. Dear self at day 0, welcome to the world, baby girl. Make sure to put your tray in the upright position. We are ready for takeoff. You are in for quite the ride. Everyone is excited that you're here. They swaddle you in pink, breathe in your baby scent, caress those chunka-munka cheeks. By the way, those don't go away. You are going to look 12 for the rest of your life, but that's okay. You have a lot of people who love you. Some will love you in a way that leaves you breathless. Some will love you in a way that makes only sense to them. Take what you need and leave the rest. Dear self at 5, your aunt is here. You're asleep so you don't know, but something is brewing. There are pills, there are yells, the air is thick. But he's just going through a rough patch. He's fine. He'll be fine. Even though he weeps, no one calls an ambulance and the world goes back to sleep. Dear self at 12, your body is changing, things are growing, everything is confusing. Sometimes you feel like you're on top of the world, heaping bowls of cereal and Saturday morning cartoons, Power Ranger trading cards, great delicious bubblegum, King's Castle and Spice Girls on MTV, euphoric and lightheaded between 1 and 10, a freaking 13. And then there are other times though, you're crying, tantruming, screaming, nervous system reeling, your breathing gets all caught up in your lungs and the panic just rises and rises. And you can't go to school because none of the clothes look good on your fat body and everybody sees. And also you're feeling things. People are dating, but boys are gross. They sweat, they smell weird, and they're never nice. But when your friend asks why you don't have pictures of boys on your wall, you get a boyfriend real quick. Poor old kid didn't even get a kiss. But you also like the way your English teacher smiles and the girl next to you wears the nicest body spray. Note to you, girlfriend, those feelings will never go away. That too is okay. Dear self at 14, high school is terrible. You feel invisible. Home is a giant what the hell. When it's good, it's so good. But when it's bad, it feels like this all-consuming sense of foreboding. Tick, tock, boom. Everything around is exploding. And then it really hits, and you decide you want peace, and you try to end the pain in the first floor bathroom, and the school calls home. He shows up whispering, I love you, I love you, I love you, but she never comes. Remember, some will love you in a way that leaves you breathless. Some will only love you in a way that makes sense to them. Take what you need and leave the rest. Dear 17, hey little Janice Ian, you got into college, look at you go. You didn't want to apply, but your aunt showed up with a Princeton review one night and said start searching. So, ta-da, you're in college. What the hell, you're not smart enough for this. But here we go, we're just gonna wing it. You have never fit in before, anywhere. But your floor mates are a gaggle of weirdos, a weirdness that sees you're weird and raises it to mega weird. And you love it. For the first time in your life, you have a voice. You actually have things to say, you're loud, you're funny, and people think you should be on stage. But the next 4 years, there are parties, and for a while you forget that college is more than parties, but you get it together, and for the first time, you think you're actually smart, and you fall in love, and the world feels warm. Like the universe is just pulling the earth closer to the sun, and you're floating up, up, up. But then there are days when it's hard, and you have no reasons, that you're crying and you're screaming like someone ripped all of your seams and let your innards out. But you're the life of a party, so you push that stuff aside. Grab a beer, you'll get back to those feelings later. There's shenanigans afoot. Later, just deal with it later. High 20s, it's later. Oh boy, congrats. You got a diagnosis. Someone gave it a name. That festering feeling inside your bones that swallowed you up. Sometimes with new meds you feel nothing. Med change, now you feel everything. Med change, now the world is on fire. And that you're the only one who can put it out. Med change, now you're outside with no shoes. Awesome, what a time to be alive. Your apartment is done, your car is broken, your job non-existent, your community has left. There is not one relationship you're not struggling in. You have burned every bridge and took the ashes and rolled in them. It's dire, it's scary. There is no safety net, no place to fall. But the good thing about being at the bottom is there's nothing, not one damn thing to lose. So slowly you rebuild yourself. Step 1, breathe. Step 2, get a job. Step 3, make amends. You hurt your parents again. Step 4, breathe, breathe, breathe. Just keep breathing. Deal self in her 30s. I love you. You're okay. Even when you're not okay, you're okay. You're fun, you're loved by someone who loves you in a way that makes sense to you. You have the best intentions and you make people feel like they matter because in your ripe old age, you see that everyone does matter. That we all deserve peace and everyone deserves a shot. We all watch the movies. Happily after is an unrealistic expectation to score. Happy ever, well-adjusted is the stuff that dreams are made of, the stuff that we should be fighting for. Life is not linear, the struggle is in the everyday. We struggle, we adapt, we mess up, we retract, we fall, and we get back up. And it is okay. It is okay to have a bad day, to feel like not all is well, to embrace the sweet, the sour, and everything in between. But it is not okay to give up. You stay down for a few, but you make sure you get back up. Love others, but love yourself first. Embrace your weird, you beautiful oddity, and let yourself shine. The world is out there waiting for you. Stand up, put your shoes on, go outside. I love you. For the first time, I'm saying it for the world to hear. I love you, and I'm rooting for you, and all you have in this world to give, let's do it. I'm begging you. Let's just live. Thank you.
You know, they say great art makes you feel something. Tiff, stop making me feel things. Our next poet tonight, Marilyn Gove, has worked as a journalist, copywriter, coach, trainer, and director of enrollment services at a university level. She considers herself an emerging poet and is a core member of the Westwood Poetry Group, facilitated by Westwood Poet Laureate Lynn Vitti. Ms. Gove read recently at the new members celebration hosted by the New England Poetry Club. She resides in Plymouth, Massachusetts. Marilyn, come on up.
Well, that made me feel like Jennifer Lawrence. Remember at the Oscars? That's my debut, so. I understand that if you seek support from people, they are usually kind enough to give it back. So I am new to Plymouth. It's my first time reading in Plymouth, so if you could kindly support me, I'd appreciate that. Firstly, I just would like to take a moment to thank Jennifer Harris. I moved into Sawyer's Reach at the end of January, and I met her about a year and a half ago. She was actually the first person I met in that condo complex. And my sister told her immediately that I was a poet and that I was just, absolutely fantastic, which always makes you blush because it may not be true. And she connected me to Miriam, and I'm here today, so I really feel quite grateful. Thank you so much. This evening, I have 3 poems, and the first 2 are about my family, and they're influenced by my upbringing in a Jewish home following World War II. During this time, we lived in Revere, Mass, and in Winthrop, Mass as well. The third poem, I think, is a fun poem, and it's about a store I love, and I'm sure you'll all be familiar with it. And I think it says something very important about consumerism as well. Okie doke. Here's the first one. Winthrop, Mass, 1960s. My father sits in the corner, conversing with shadows, sits in the corner cutting ice cream with a knife and fork. My sisters turn from him. I tell a joke, desperate to entertain. He looks past me, flicks his fingers upwards, mutters imaginings into an inattentive ear. Tomorrow, I will shake him loose, walk the verdant highlands, climb the sky on the squeaky swings near Sewell Ave, dally on the gentle slopes of Fort Heath, then reaching the town beach, watch seagulls dive into the wild sea, their strokes taking me farther and farther away. This next poem is about Shabbat Shalom, a traditional Jewish blessing. And just for a little information, Shabbat is Hebrew, meaning prayer or a time of prayer. Shalom is Hebrew for peace, and Shabbat Shalom is a prayer for peace and a time to rest. This is a prose poem, and it's divided into 3 sections. Its title is The Sun Sets with Shabbat Shalom. 1. The gray bone of winter pounds the northeast with cruel winds and heavy snow. Whiplash streets howl with despair. Trees topple and power goes out. Shabbat candles dot the darkened house with circles of light. 2. Father sits in the kitchen, skinning a Hostess snowball. Deftly, he lifts the pink coconut marshmallow from the chocolate cream-filled cupcake and sets it beside the pan-fried matzah, sliced bagels, lox, and Philadelphia cream cheese. He licks his sweetened fingers, then devours the processed treat. He does not speak or share. 3. Mother stands in the kitchen, a prayer towel covering her tightly permed hair. The Shabbat candles are lit. The blessing she recites becomes routine. Barak atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam, asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'vitznanu lahalik ner shel Shabbat. Mother waves her long, slender fingers 3 times over the candles, drawing the holy energy towards her. It looks like a magic trick. I wonder if she prays for a happy life. The last one, and the store I love, is Saturday at Costco's. You've been there, right? Figure I bring a little balance to the first 2 poems, Don't want you to leave here having to take lithium or anything like that. Saturday at Costco's. Behold the big box store, pantheon of infinite aisles, purveyor of brands and discounted goods. Oh, how the masses clamor through your metal and glass doors, each a certified member clutching the supersized cot, their deity the coveted 2-for-1. And before their wallets are emptied, the hallowed food sampler, tiny elderly food sampler, thin hair tucked tightly beneath an unattractive cap, summons their ebbing hunger. Come, celebrate our double fudge truffles, savor our gluten-free dim sum, delight as you munch on the organic crunch of our stay trim and slim bar. Behold the big box store, experience its shrink wrap pulse, sing praise to America's lifeline, as much a prayer answered as it is a prayer lost. Thank you.
A word to our poets tonight. Feel free to use any of the staircases you see, whatever you're most comfortable with. Our next poet is Bill Alberti. Bill Alberti's poems have appeared in several literary magazines and journals. He has 5 published chapbooks of poetry, and for 9 years was the poet columnist for Gatehouse Media. His column, The Poet's Pen, appeared in 16 local weekly newspapers, including the Old Colony Memorial. He was a member of both Tide Pool Poets and Poetry, The Art of Words, including many visual inverse events. Ladies and gentlemen, Bill Alberti.
Good evening. I'm honored to be here, to be able to read for you. So the first poem is a little tribute to spring, which is just really right upon us right now. It's called Spring Shower. Early morning sky weeps tears, crippity-crock on leaves. From a favorite chair by my cracked open window, I sip first coffee, watching, listening. Swish, swish. A commuter motors through black lakes, spewing silver, wet tinsel streamers. Downspouts rattle with rain, tick-tapping a metronomic melody. Moss moistens. Dry grass whispers gratitude. Tree branches bow in thanksgiving. I hear growing. The greening of the neighborhood. I smell the earth's refreshment, the quenching of its parched pores. And like the oxygenated air sweeping in and over me, I sigh with delight, and my heart smiles large. We all have backs, and I'm sure we know someone or ourselves who have suffered some back pain. So I was trying to write a blues poem, and I decided to dedicate it to my back. It's called The Bad Back Blues. Yesterday I did too much. Today my back's in real pain. Yesterday I bent so low. Now I got to use a cane. I had to see a chiropractor. Pretzeled me, gave me a pill. I went to see this chiropractor. I left with one big hefty bill. Today is not a good day, 'cause I gots the bad back blues. Today it ain't no good day. I did work I should have refused. Now my muscles all in spasm, running up and down my spine. Oh, my lower back's in spasm. I'm all twisted like a vine. So I won't lift one finger. Of that I am emphatic. 'Cause if I lifts one finger, it might become sciatic. I ain't going for no x-rays. Why take unneeded risk? I ain't posing for no x-rays. I know it's bulging disc. The pain, it sure is throbbing. Feels like I'm in a vice. My lower back's a throbbing. Think I'll go and get some ice and put it in a tall glass. Add bourbon whiskey to the mix, then drink it down real fast. I'll be nursing my own fix. Thank you. One summer I was lucky enough to study at the University of Ireland in the Galway campus. And I got to explore that city, that lovely city. And when I came home, I put the images that kind of came to me in this litany poem. It's called Reflections on the Gift of Galway. Stones and stucco, stucco and stones, block upon block, bone upon bone. Black iron grates, garden gates, hedgerow screens of evergreens. Chieftain gray sky, warlike mountain, doomed cathedral, cascade fountain, scarves and sweaters and street musicians, statue still mimes, changed positions, street-lined shop stores, Spanish arches, white swan families swim the marshes. The Corrib River runs Celtic fast, salmon fishers reel their casts. Restaurants and pubs and cobblestone street, doorway bridges where lovers meet. This and much more my heart has seen in Galway town, my Irish dream. And now you see, my poem is finished. Time for some crack and a pint of Guinness. And lastly, my first readings, as many of yours, were probably the nursery rhymes. And I would do those every night with my mother before I went to sleep. So I wrote this poem in honor of her. And if you're following it carefully, there are 10 fairy tales in here. You can count them as you hear. Titled, Once Upon a Time. I wished for a fairy godmother and a cricket conscience guide, 7 dwarfs to be my friends, and a Gretel by my side. I wanted to whistle while I worked and weave straw into gold, wear slippers made of glass, and never grow up or old. I wanted to ride inside a pumpkin, build a house of sturdy bricks, climb up a magic beanstalk, and be wise to witches' tricks. I wanted to sleep in a bed just right, have a long nose made of wood, sprinkle a path of breadcrumbs, and wear a Red Riding Hood. I learned lessons from the fairy tales. Never lie, always obey. Do not talk to strangers and heed what parents say. I mostly was a good boy, didn't cry or complain, walked the straight and narrow, not easy to sustain. I miss Mom reading the storybooks, the good times and the laughter. Her magic and her love remembered lives happily ever after. Thank you.
Thank you, Bill. Our next poet tonight is Joanna Zarkadis. Joanna has been practicing random acts of writing since she could hold a pencil. She writes what she observes with her eyes and experiences with her heart. Her poems celebrate the beauty and the wisdom that she sees all around her. Joanna, come up and share some of that wisdom, would you?
I didn't think I could do those stairs. This poem is called Enough. I do not read newspapers anymore. I read novels and magazines, recipes and poems. I read clouds and sunsets, shadows and snowflakes. I read bird prints and tide lines on the shore, the bark of trees, the the patterns of pine needles on the forest floor. I read people's faces and hands, their body language, and their eyes. I do not listen to newscasts anymore. I listen to the wind swirling through the grasses and the waves as they come and go along the beach. I listen to the honking of geese, the quarreling of starlings, the cooing of mourning doves. I listen to the joyful sound of laughter and the silent sound of tears. I listen to the sweetness of voices singing together and the comforting sound of many hearts beating as one. For me, this is enough. This next little poem is called The Beach Road, and it's a true story. This morning, before the sun breathed in the moist ocean air, before the sky changed her grays to blues, before the joggers jogged and the dog walkers walked, before the tiny cottage windows were lit with light, a lone deer and I traveled the quiet beach road together, each of us in our own lane. With her long, lean legs, she matched her pace with mine. With my 4 round wheels, I matched my pace with hers. We gazed at each other with curiosity until she turned left through the grasses towards the pond, and I continued my long journey north for a play date with my granddaughter. This poem is called Today's Offering. My offering today is a gentle gray morning of muted colors, an afternoon of quiet rain dancing on the walkways, 1,000 ripples on the pond overlapping and expanding to the water's edge. I offer you the distant cry of a lone bird longing for its mate, and the softest rumble of thunder that soothes like a lullaby. I gift you the 100 jeweled water drops caught in the tiny sections of my screen door, the last yellow rose still in full bloom by the rock wall, and 3 red tomatoes bathed in raindrops. This is my offering today, an ordinary October day of unassuming beauty. And my last poem is called Pajama Days. Here's to Pajama Days and the people who celebrate them. Here's to comfort over style, uncombed hair, faces without makeup. Hats off to reading all day, binge watching the latest Netflix series. Kudos to cold pizza for breakfast or hot buttered popcorn for dinner. Blue ribbons for long phone conversations with friends and lazy couch lounging by the fire. Gold medals for forgetting about to-do lists, bathrooms that need cleaning or bills that need paying. Cheers to taking a day off every now and again, without remorse, without guilt, without judgment. And high fives to sometimes doing whatever you want, when you want, and eating whatever suits your fancy, no matter the carb content or the sugar count. Here's to Pajama Days, and a round of applause for those who know they deserve them. Thank you.
Thank you, Joanna. Our next poet is Susan Cook Thanis. Sue is a retired English teacher from Duxbury High and middle schools. She began to write poetry when Duxbury High sponsored Barbara Helfgott Hyatt as poet in residence in the late 70s. Her poetry often reflects her experiences with family, life, and places that she knows well. She's an active member of the Poetry Circle at Duxbury Free Library and Poetry, the Art of Words in Plymouth, where she will be a featured poet in September. Ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Susan.
Hello. It's a true pleasure to be here and be part of this event. I have 4 poems I would like to read. They go from the light to the more serious. The first one is called Lemonade, A-I-D. Freckles galloped across the bridge of my nose, new spots appearing each summer. They'll fade. You'll see, everyone said when I was 12. But not believing them, I'd sneak into the kitchen, peer inside the refrigerator to look for a lemon tucked under the lettuce in the bin below. Then, with knife in hand, I'd creep upstairs, hoping no one was in the bathroom. The blade, sliding beneath the peel, released a pungent spray from the pulp I rubbed on my cheeks and nose, blinking back tears. Now I wish I still had those freckles instead of the ones covering my arms and hands, and I prefer my lemon on lobster or in tea. This next poem is, I think I wrote it about 2 years ago, and maybe some of you have shared the same type of experience. Turn here. Yesterday, I left home for exit 6A in Plymouth, but drove right by it. 6A was nowhere in sight. When I found myself at the bridge to the Cape, I knew it wasn't right. It was a bridge too far. Confused, I headed home to exit 10, but it had doubled its number to 20. I was Charlie on the MTA, unable to reach my destination. Now I couldn't even find my home. What in tarnation could I do? My only thought was to take any exit and find a route I knew by heart. What peace! What comfort to find a familiar highway. I turned left, kept driving past signs for Gulf Gas and Dunkin' Donuts, feeling so relieved I missed my road, but had a lovely ride in the countryside before I turned around and rolled right into my driveway. I think you've shared that experience. This next poem is an ekphrastic poem about this owl that was photographed by Priscilla Peterson, and it's also a sonnet. Who knows? This bird with fiery eyes and small hooked bill, her tawny cape with speckled dark spots teeming, looks back as if with sage advice that will protect or guide another from what's seeming. The mystic wisdom nature gives these birds is like a secret charm in some abiding. Athena's was a small owl, so we heard, and Archimedes gave Merlin his tidings. But are these myths of owls' great powers true? In Rome an omen, but to Zuni's good? The world is full of legends' diverse views. To some they're clear, to some misunderstood. So let's just look to recognize the grace of this grand bird, her stately form, her face. And this last one I wrote in March of 2022. Here and there. I pour a glass of wine and sit down to watch the news. Nothing else seems to matter. A grandfather hugs his pink snow-suited granddaughter before she and her mother head into Poland, and he heads back to Kyiv to fight. Mass accident in Lviv and Kharkiv train stations. Those deciding to stay defiantly dig in. Citizens make Molotov cocktails. Blue and yellow flags fly everywhere. Social media resistance, online 20 hours a day. President Zelensky begs NATO for a no-fly zone. The US pledges to defend NATO allies. Ukraine is not among them. We are warned that cyber attacks will take down our grids, but right now, my heart beats for Ukraine. I will pay what I need to at the gas pumps, have sent for a blue and yellow flag to hang in my yard. Zelensky is David to Putin's Goliath. A big stone is needed for the slingshot. A man says, in Ukraine, we have two kinds of ammunition, guns and faith. As Ukrainians hunker down till dawn in bomb shelters, I sadly head upstairs to bed and pray their faith will hold. Thank you.
Thank you, Sue. Our next poet is Alan Howarth. He's been writing since 3rd grade. He's a member of several local poetry groups, including Duxbury Public Library. And just this evening, he turned me on to a 60s rock group that I'm going to look up when I get home, Eden's Children, for whom he wrote lyrics, as well as singer and pianist Cecilia Pryor. Alan, welcome to the stage.
Good evening. Thank you for lending your ears to me tonight. And I'm going to actually treat you to a poem that I just wrote just last night, so we'll see how that goes. As a young kid growing up in the 1960s, when you turned 18, one of the first things you had to go and do was go down to your local draft board and register for the draft. At the time, they decided to do something new, which was to create a lottery system. So depending on your birthday, you were assigned a number from 1 to 365, as I recall. I was lucky. I got 261. But that's kind of the background to this first poem that I'm going to read tonight, and it's called Numbers. You know, it was a time of great uncertainty during those days, and so basically you were getting numbers to either kill or be killed. It could be 1 or it could be 261, just numbers, or they carried the burden of life and death on their strong shoulders. Numbers whose meaning meant who could live and who could die. It was a lottery for war. Many signed up, some fled. I was lucky, I was the bird. I drew 261. Thank you. And I have one other poem that I'm going to read tonight. And this is dedicated to two dear casualties of the 1960s, Michael James Callahan and Sandy Brown. And this is called Standing. Standing for fear my footsteps would falter, I am here on the riverbank, hearing you asking me to put on my armor and wear your colors. You ask not that I go to battle on the fields of Spain or in the dark forests, but the alleys of despair and the streets of loneliness. You offer your love as my shield, that same love you will use to nurse my wounds, to fight the illnesses that plague my heart. Lady, I shall carry your banner, a white dove on a scarlet field, Dona nobis pacem inscribed in the strongest black. And lady, I shall carry your love of this river, of the lonely gull, of these dying October flowers. And lady, my pledge to thee, sworn on the stars, I lay my pen at your feet, for I own no sword. Thank you.
Thank you, Alan. Our next poet tonight is Chris Toto Zaremba, a performing poet, storyteller, and author of Angel of the Harbor, a Christmas story set in Scituate Harbor. She hosted the Duxbury Poetry Circle and currently hosts the Scituate Poetry Circle. Chris loves to read her poetry wherever people will listen and can be heard later this month at the Poetry Marathon at the Cape Cod Cultural Center. Chris, we are ready to listen.
It's great to be here tonight. Thank you. So my first poem is about why I write. It's called Words. My words refuse to sit quietly in my brain. They play with each other, constantly bantering, especially at night, while they run back and forth across my pillow, held over my ears to quiet their volume. Most days it's useless to ignore them. They rush out of me, down my arms, onto my fingertips, and search for a pen, then onto any willing or even unwilling surface that will allow their creative dance, their ramblings, their rants. A white computer screen, paper hiding in my desk, a leftover napkin, a dusty dashboard, all merely a plaything for my words. My words, they can get me to pull over on the side of the road, to let them jump out, jump up and down, mocking the oncoming traffic, just so they can have their say. My words, there's no holding them back. After a few shots of Jack in a bar, that's unfortunate enough to have an open mic that night. They will show off, shout out, stand under the table, and wow a few drunk people, especially if they are dirty that night. My dirty words, I try to keep those for the bedroom, but sometimes they just slip out. My words, they get me into trouble, and then they talk their way out of it. They'll make you smile, they'll make you reflect, they'll give you comfort, they'll teach you a thing or two. They're powerful creatures. Just looking out at this audience, I can see they got you, and you're hanging on every one of my words. This one is about especially guys who like to do things with their hands. It's called Cleaning My Pipes. He came to clean my pipes today, a toolbox in his hand. I opened my front door to him, a very good-looking man. He followed me to my bedroom. The pipes were beyond that door. He hung his hat upon the hook. He laid his tools upon my floor. I asked if I could watch him work, or if he prefer I look away. He smiled, a bad boy smile, and told me I could stay. He began to unscrew the first pipe, his hands so big and strong. A bead of sweat rolled down my face. He asked if something was wrong. Leaning over above the tub, down upon his knees, he asked me to hold his wrench so he could get a tighter squeeze. His arm, it rubbed against my thigh as I held the wrench so tight. The faucet let out a boom. Water gushed with all its might. We laughed to ease the tension as we stood there dripping wet. I handed him a towel, but he had not finished yet. He cleaned my pipes, packed up his tools, and said that was quite an afternoon, and that he'd be back another day to clean my other pipes real soon. This one's called Let Go. He set the pace. She walked the path beside him. It was grass-covered, sometimes rocky. In order to get by the obstacles, they held hands. Those hands held their world. She set the boundaries, he pushed the limits. It was the push and pull of a marriage, the highs and lows and highs again. In order to get by the obstacles, they held each other. Sometimes they held on to hope, sometimes for dear life. He went ahead, she fell behind. It was an unexpected part of their journey. It was a hard lesson to learn. In order to get by, sometimes you have to let go. And in talking about him, he was a musician. This one's called Strings. He always pulled at my heartstrings. He kept one wrapped around his little finger as he fingered the strings on his guitar. He stretched that string to its breaking point when he walked out the door. No strings could bind him, no strings attached, no one to string along. Along the way, one way outside, figuring it out. Living on a string, strumming a tune on the sidewalk as people walked by, barely noticing. He was playing real good for free. Free, strapped to a guitar, strung out by a tune, strung out by the devils in his head, heading down the wrong path on a country road in life that twists and turns, but never really brings you back to that long and winding road that leads you home. Homeless, left with one string homeless, left with one string left to strum, the one he kept wrapped around his finger, the one that once held my heart. And this last one, I wrote last night in the darkness. I have notebooks everywhere because it just falls out of me sometimes. So it was dark, and I didn't want to turn the light on to bother my partner. So I scribbled it in the notebook next to my bed, and I didn't know if I was even going to be able to read it when I woke up, but I did. It's called Covers. Sheet, blanket, comforter. In the darkness, he slept. I started my nighttime dance. Covers on, covers off, covers on. Sheet, blanket, comforter. My hands stretched out for the button of the floor fan on my side of the bed. Air. Oh. Sheet, blanket, comforter. Thank you.
Thank you, Chris. Our next poet tonight is Sheila Lynch Bentinen. Sheila has a long and varied career in Boston. She writes poetry, paints, does photography, and is interested in local archaeology and history. Her poetry has been published in many journals. She lives in Duxbury with her husband, daughter, and her bearded collie. Thanks so much for being here, Sheila.
Thank you. I'd like to thank all those that organized this evening. It's wonderful for poets. My first poem is called In New England, We Live on Memory. In New England, we live on memory. Walking past the brown forsythia in February, we remember the bright yellow fire in April. The hot, humid August day reminds us that a hushed snowfall will come. The dull brown earth in March brings us hope for the opulently gorgeous peony in May. The dark purple frozen cranberry bog in winter reminds us of the October blazing red harvest. The windswept grass of the outer beach in September leads us to recall the fierce, magnificent snowy owl in winter. The plain brown stick bush in January brings the early yellow-dressed witch hazel in March. The green rolling hills of summer bring the stunning, brilliant orange, red, and magenta of October. The small bump of brown in January brings the extravagant bearded iris in June. Boats shrink-wrapped in white all winter bring the swift pleasure craft of summer on the bay. People wrapped in down coats in February bring the flip-flops and shorts of July. And I always live with the memory of you. In New England, we live on memory. The next poem is a poem I wrote about my mother. Galaxy. I was a dull moon orbiting around in her galaxy. She was the brightest, shiny center. We all revolved around her, pulled in by her energy, in great awe of her attraction. Now, gravity has changed with time and space. All that is left are the beautiful impressions of the light of her existence. We are most grateful to have witnessed her glow. This next poem I just wrote. It's titled Starship and I. If you don't know, SpaceX launched their biggest rocket last week called Starship, and it rose a few thousand feet, and then it burst into this magnificent smoke-colored thing. And it prompted this poem. Starship and I can relate to you, O blown to smithereens starship. Starship experienced a rapid, unscheduled disassembly before stage separation. I am officially a senior citizen, according to the disunited States Social Security Office. I think about how my bag of bones will have their rapid, unscheduled disassembly. I think about my family that I love and how stage separation will happen. I shall be disassembled into my chemical constituents and hopefully reorganized into something useful. Had I enough time left, I would learn the art of ignoring the news of the world and keep to my own singular passions and pleasures. In the meantime, I shall eat chocolate and enjoy the indescribable color of new spring grass. Now that I am old, I shall wear my softest moo-moo socks and never, not ever, do what I am told. And my last poem is a haiku. And April is always a tricky month in New England. This haiku is titled April in New England Haiku. Oh, April pretends. She is married to sweet spring, still dating winter. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila. Our final poet tonight is Tanya Peters. Tanya is a lifelong Cape Codder, born and raised in Falmouth, a widowed mom of 2 adult daughters, She's been a nurse for 15 years, currently working in surgery at Cape Cod Hospital. She's been writing poetry since the 2nd grade, and tonight is her first time reading her poetry to an audience. Tanya, come on out here, and welcome to Continental Cape Cod.
Good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for allowing me to be here. I'm grateful for this opportunity. I only brought one poem tonight. I didn't know that we were bringing a whole bunch, so I brought one. It's called Refocus. Why did you have to come looking for me when all I wanted was that you'd leave me be? And I avoid any shadow of you that lingers in the street, because I can feel that pull that your mind has on me. Still, you scattered pieces of yourself into my routine, asking for me, calling, texting, making sure you were seen. And of course I lost control in that moment when I saw your face. I gave you all the benefit, no doubt. And I began to crave your presence, like somehow it was unfair to go without. So I let you in again, unzipped my heart from its enclosure, handed it right to you, and hoped you'd hold it gently and not spill it over. I stood on the edge with you and all of your beautiful words. I jump, you jump. We'll soar through life like two lovebirds. I closed my eyes for just a quick second to take it all in. I breathed relief from my soul to feel this type of love again. You held on tight to my hand. I smiled. I was ready. I looked straight into your eyes, but then something felt unsteady. I can see your weakness as you fumble, and all your words sound like fear. Suddenly, our vibration didn't match. It was like I can't stand what I might hear. See, the position you were given in my life was a gift that you forfeit, and the bond that we could have had was the strongest, but now you've torn it. So I let go of your hand swiftly in that moment to catch myself. I backed away from the ledge, got my balance, zipped up my heart, and focused on my health. It took a minute for me to realize that this blessing came disguised as a lesson for me. And in time, I'd see that my attachment to you was something that would lessen for me. Because, see, I don't have to hide my heart from the world locked in the dark. I can throw out the key, give away all my love, and still shine my spark. My spirit, my light, my beauty, all unconditionally, spread across my world, giving beautiful pieces of me. So why did you have to come looking for me when all I wanted was that you'd leave me be? Well, I know the answer now. It's because I had to see that this beautiful life is made for one thing only, to love myself and give of myself and shine so bright that I could never be lonely. Thank you.
I also wrote a poem just now. I'm kidding, I did not. No, I'm ending this. We've run out the clock. I want to thank everyone for coming tonight. Your hard work is celebrated in Plymouth, and please pay attention to our calendars on America's Hometown Laureates.com. Yes? Yep. There you go. You heard it here first, folks. HometownLaureates.com. We have a calendar of events. We have a whole summer worth of events for you to look forward to. Please take, is there any other notices? Oh, yes. We have to thank our funders this evening, our local Plymouth Cultural Council. Thank you so much for funding this event. Thank you. Yes. And as we conclude, I just want to say one thing about the Hometown Laureates Board of Directors. This is a group of people that came together because they had a passion for Plymouth. They have an appreciation for poetry. I myself am not even smart enough to understand most poetry, but tonight I had so much knowledge and wisdom and emotion imparted on me. I'm looking forward to seeing you all again at our events. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for your hard work at the Hometown Laureates Board of Directors. We'll see you again soon, folks. And also, thank you to PAC TV, our media partners. Cannot do this without them tonight. Thank you, everyone. Drive safely. We'll see you again soon.